You're watching Prime News on HLN. For the second time in nearly a week, a Louisiana family's been ripped apart. Let's backtrack for you. First off, 12-year-old Amber White disappeared from her neighborhood pool. We covered the story, talked to her parents, especially her mom, and we cheered when she was found alive 2 days later. But then days after that, Child Protective Services took Amber and her younger sister from the family home, saying they lacked supervision. Now the girls are in foster care. Again, a stunning development here. We'll take your calls. 1-877-TEL-HLN's the number. Joining me to talk about this, Michelle Sagona, investigative journalist. You can always check out updates on stories like this at her website, michellesagona.com. Michelle's covered this one extensively. Also with us, family law attorney Kelly Saint. And Kelly, I'll start with you. How unusual is it? A family goes through what they went through just days ago. Now the two young girls are taken from the home and in foster care. What do you make of that?
It is pretty unusual, but I think there's more to the story than just that she was abducted. Apparently, one of these two men had actually been in their home before, and this was a 12-year-old that walked to a pool by herself. She was abducted. Her dad picked her up from a store later. And so what I think happened is there was some investigation done that showed maybe they weren't keeping as close watch on these two girls as they should have, and maybe if the parents had paid a little more attention, this wouldn't have happened. Gotcha.
Okay, Michelle, what are authorities saying? And again, because we're stunned to think that not only Amber, but her little sister will be taken from the home as well.
It's very shocking, and I did speak with investigators, but they won't comment on the child protective end specifically. What I was told by them was that more arrests are probably underway, that they're still investigating this case and moving through things very carefully. They have the time to do so. They've already charged 2 people, as we know. I also spoke with Trey Williams. He's with the Department of Child and Family Services. They're based out of Baton Rouge, but cover the Shreveport area. And he cannot comment on this case specifically. He cannot go into detail about anything, but what he can tell me is that when more than one child is taken out of a house at a time, so in this case there's 2 children, they do their best to try to keep both of those children together when they place them first, hopefully with a family member, and if not, in foster care. And then they also do their best to work with the parents to try to bring those children back into the home again. So at this particular point, I'm sure that more investigations are done. I've spoken with a lot of neighbors in the area, and they said that one of the children was actually out playing at a neighbor's house when she was picked up by CPS.
Okay, let's hit this on a couple of fronts, Kelly. Number one, what does CPS have to go in there? I mean, because again, this is such a unique situation, especially with what happened last week.
Well, usually you would have to have a report of abuse, something that raises suspicion of abuse, and under the Louisiana Code, this is abuse. It's considered abuse, failure to properly supervise. And the fact that this happened, that she was in fact abducted, that he's now been charged with rape, that her dad went and picked her up from this convenience store, that obviously raised suspicion. So I suspect that they started interviewing and found out that maybe these parents weren't as involved as the standard is in Louisiana.
Okay, so then on the other side of it, so what do the parents have to do to prove this is a safe environment? We want and I should have our kids back.
Well, I would think first and foremost they'd need a plan of how these girls were going to be supervised, what they were doing to help this 12-year-old Amber now that she's been through this trauma, what plan that they have to make sure that they're supervised, that she's getting the proper treatment, and possibly if the neighbors are saying this lack of supervision led to it, that they have a plan in place for daycare to show that they're fit parents, they're looking out for her, and this wasn't in their control. There was nothing they could have done differently.
Gotcha. Michelle, any comment from the family? Go ahead.
No, I did reach out to them, but unfortunately the phone rang and rang all day long. But I do want to say that we have to keep in mind that, remember, when Amber was recovered, she was placed back into the home.
Right.
And, and then an investigation took place after that. So there may have been information uncovered based on what she told investigators and the information that they were sort of seeking out about the abduction, which then in turn back into her family home, which then gave them the information that they needed to move forward, possibly, with drug tests maybe, or with whatever kind of investigative tools that they needed to be able to determine if these children are in an unsafe environment.
Okay, again, a stunning development. Amber White and her younger sister removed from the home. Amber taken last week. We'll get the latest. Stay with us. You're watching Prime News on HLN. Again, we cheered last week on this program as 12-year-old Amber White was found alive after being missing from her family for about 56 hours. As the story goes, she was walking to the pool, and that's when she was taken, forced into a vehicle. We're still investigating that side of it. But now, a few days later, she and her younger sister have been taken out of the home, and they've been put into foster care. Many of you weighed in on Facebook. Tiandria writes this: that is wrong. The children should be with their parents. Jill says this: there is more to this story than kids being taken away for walking alone to the pool. And I know that strikes many of you. You're thinking a 12-year-old should be able to walk alone to the neighborhood pool. We'll take your calls on it. 1-877-TEL-HLN's the number. Michelle Sagona's with us. You can always check out more on stories like this at her website, michellesagona.com. Michelle, have you talked to neighbors, anybody else who's somewhat close to this situation?
I have. Since Amber disappeared, and then again today. And from what I'm told is that the environment inside of the home may not have been up to par. And I don't want to say too much because I do want to give Amber's family a chance to be able to respond to that, and that's why I reached out to them as well. And as you and I both talked to Amber's family, they were extremely concerned about their child being gone, and were doing everything that they could to be able to speak out and to cooperate and to help find their daughter. So, you know, it's sort of like in a he said, she said sort of fashion, and what neighbors will say about another neighbor. So I really don't want to get into too much detail. But from what I was told, it didn't appear to be the best environment for the children, and that's maybe why this happened, or maybe to pull them out and to do a deeper investigation. Gotcha.
You're right. In talking to the mom, Karen White, she was so emotional, so overjoyed when her Amber came home alive. So
same with her father, very concerned, very upset, relieved. You know, so this is interesting.
Yeah, and that's why I'm sure it shocked so many of us. All right, Kelly, in looking at a case like this, being a family law attorney, I mean, can we delve into the mind? What could a 12-year-old and her younger sister be going through? I mean, this has been such a brutal week for them.
Well, you have to know it's a brutal week for both of them, more so for Amber because of her alleged kidnapper being charged with rape. So we really have no idea yet exactly what she's been through. But then to be pulled away from your family, out of the environment that you know, even if it's not the most safe environment, you know, all sense of safety is probably gone for her. So she's going to need counseling. She's going to have to go through this evaluation to see if, in fact, her parents are suitable to take her back and what she needs to do to be on the road to recovery. And I'm sure her younger sister as well, because this has got to be very traumatic.
Right. Michelle, real quick, again, to backtrack, there have been 2 arrests in Amber's case being held. 25-year-old Henry Lee's charged with aggravated rape. 19-year-old Brandon Player charged with contributing to delinquency of a minor. Any more arrests? Do we expect any more in the case?
Yes, investigators have said, and I was told earlier today that they do expect more arrests in this case. So that's something that we should definitely keep our eyes on and be able to determine who else had a key in this investigation, who else may be charged.
All right. Ladies, thanks so much. Michelle, Kelly, we appreciate it. Coming up.